Hi, Nathan Davis here for Cryptid Studies Institute or cryptidsi.org. Today's video is about ruling out deception when it comes to individual cases that come about within this field. As I look at it, any field, including this one, has to be scrutinized scientifically, and you have to look at things in a logical manner. Even if you have gone through something that is paranormal, uh, psychically related, or whatever, it doesn't mean that somebody bringing about a similar scenario is necessarily true. Uh, and that's kind of the thing that I find very odd about human behavior is that we get kind of locked into biases, that we will defend things because we ourselves have experienced it. And that's really where deception can come into play. And I think that we have to look at things, and what I've tried to do is show other ways of looking at stuff. Not attacking the research as a whole and saying it's fake, but saying that there's other ways of looking at it so that basically we can broaden our perspective on it. If you haven't been there and experienced what that person is doing, you're just relying on your communication with them online or over the phone, you really don't have a full picture of whether they're deceiving you or not. And when you hold on to a bias of, hey, I've had an experience, you tend to defend anyone that comes up with a similar experience. And you forget that your story and other stories like yours are out there so that somebody can come about and research all that information and come up with a deception that fits into your paradigm so you'll buy into it. Now, this is not to say that everybody that has had a psychic experience or a paranormal one is lying. That's not true. You have to look at it as that information's out there, so you have to look through things with a fine-tooth comb. It's the same thing with Bigfoot. We all know that there are fake videos out there, and some are plain as day. Others, you have to really scrutinize the information to break it apart and prove that it's either fake or a misidentification, which can happen. Of course, there are people that go on the attack when you do that. For me, I look at cases in a broader sense, like the case of Peter Popoff. Here is a televangelist who first came out in the 80s who was proven to be deceptive. He was being fed information from his wife through an earpiece, and it made it seem like he knew amazing information about these people that were coming to his church, when in fact, all it was they had a questionnaire that people filled out, and his wife was feeding that information to him while he was up there. And so he could go up to the people and tell them where they lived, tell them their telephone number, tell them whatever, and tell them what their ailment was, and he was going to cure it. And it created a level of believability, while the whole time it was a huge deception. The crazy thing is Peter Popoff is back doing the same thing that he was doing back in the 80s. That means that through this extensive amount of time, there are people that forgot this guy's a con artist. And so now he's come back with the same con and is fooling people and taking their money when they're really looking for somebody to help them. And the same thing goes with the Bigfoot community, or really any kind of cryptid community, is you're going to have people that prey upon uh, true believers. And I hate to use that term because I think that if you've had an experience, you've actually seen them, you've you know come into contact with them in a way that's undeniable, like myself and others, where they're right there in front of you. You can't rule out. You can rule out everything else. It's something that you can't explain. What they are, I don't know, but I've seen them. So for me, I'm not a believer. I know they exist because of my own experiences. But that doesn't mean that I have to believe every case that comes before me. There has to be a level of scrutiny, and that just goes with the territory. Basically, people are going to make a joke out of this. We know that in this community. I mean, how many fake videos are out there where people make it seem so believable, but when you break it all down, you find out that it's a lie. It's kind of like Rick Dyer, who came about in 2009 with this Bigfoot in a freezer. I mean, when you looked at it, when the pictures were presented, it's like, yeah, that doesn't look real at all. And here, he came back and did pretty much the same thing. It just shows that over time, there's a certain percentage of people that will forget or forgive. Time does heal wounds. So, what I think needs to happen is people have to let go of certain biases. You have to kind of look at things through a skeptic's eye to determine whether something is real or whether somebody is trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And some people are really good at that. They're really good at reading people and coming across as genuine. Uri Geller is another one who really came across as a genuine individual, even though a lot of the things he was doing could be shown as deceptive. And the same thing with Peter Popoff and others. They came across as genuine when they were themselves deceptive. People know how to play on the human psyche and make you believe things that aren't true. Magicians who are consider themselves to be honest con men basically play on that motif. The human psyche is easily fooled, and so they play around with that in an innocent manner. But just to show you that you can be deceived, just like anybody else, unless you know the trick. And that goes with this as well. You have to kind of look at things from every angle. And you have to rule out those things that show to be a deception. If you can't rule it out, then you can't rule out deception in that case. And just knowing somebody online or over the phone does not mean you have ruled out deception in that case, because somebody can come across as very genuine and like somebody that really wants to provide information to you and has no reason for being deceptive at all. Not everybody's reasoning is clear cut. Not everybody's reasoning is money. So what I say here is just a caution. Don't buy into things hook, line, and sinker if you haven't ruled out things. And if people bring about other ways of looking at it, they're not saying that this is a hoax. They're just saying, well, you could do it this way. You could do it that way. There are other ways of looking at it that have not been ruled out. And you have to rule those out first before you can say this is a genuine case. Don't buy into things hook, line, and sinker without knowing everything. If you haven't been to somebody's research area, there's still a level of skepticism that you should have towards that research. That doesn't mean that you go on the attack. That doesn't mean that you sit there and call somebody a hoaxer or say that there's no way possible that there's no legitimacy to it. Everything should be scientifically scrutinized. That goes for psychic, paranormal as well, which goes into a gray area where how do we do that? But again, it has to be done. So again, just cautioning you. I'm not putting anybody down. Never have. I'm not doing that. All I'm doing is sitting there saying that there's other ways of looking at it. And even within this field, as somebody that knows they exist through my own personal experiences, I didn't start off that way. I read a lot of books. I watched a lot of documentaries, listened to a lot of, or read a lot of sighting reports, did a lot of that stuff, but it did not, to me, totally prove their existence. It validated it. It became plausible, more and more plausible the more and more I looked into it, but it wasn't until I had my own personal experience that it became a fact. You know, that's not to say that if you're a skeptic or somebody that hasn't had an experience that you should just take what I say full to heart. And I've never expected that of anybody because I understand. But for me, it's a fact because I've experienced it. And I guess that's the closest thing to a religious experience that somebody can have, is that have something that you're slightly skeptical of right there in front of you, and you're like, okay, well, it's real. There's no shadow of a doubt anymore. Um, and I think until somebody's experienced it, then but that doesn't mean that when you've experienced it, that everybody that can relate to you and with their stories and things of that nature is telling you the truth and not being deceptive, because there are people that are very, very good at that. Or we wouldn't have con artists. We wouldn't have Peter Popoffs and Uri Gellers and people like that. They wouldn't exist if there wasn't the ability to deceive. So, like I said, just cautioning you. Thanks for watching.